you get the green light when the mic. I call to order the Committee on House Administration for today's oversight hearing on the Government Printing Office. First of all, the hearing record will remain open for 5 legislative days, so all members may submit any materials that they wish to be included in the record. And we do have a quorum, so we can proceed. First of all, I want to offer sort of belated congratulations to our witness today, Ms. Davida Vance Cooks, on her appointment. She's the 27th public printer of the Government Printing Office. And I think certainly we can all appreciate your appointment and your service in so many ways. You're the first female to serve as the public printer. You're also leading an agency through what can only be categorized, I think, as a very historic transition, sort of evolving to meet the digital demands for the 21st century, and which is a huge task for an agency and tremendous responsibilities that you have for the American public. So we welcome you and congratulate you. For 150 years, the GPO has been responsible for the collection, production, distribution, and preservation of public information for all 3 branches of government. It's a historic and proud institution that has served this nation well as a printer of record for Congress and the federal government. Its decades-long service throughout our history is a testament to its employees, many of whom are here today, and we welcome all of you. Its institutional values, its commitment to our commonly held dedication to making self-government function transparently and efficiently. However, in the 21st century, the GPO is navigating a very changing information landscape as government information and its consumers transition from print to electronic formats. And this tradition presents both challenges and opportunities. At the request of Congress, the National Academy of Public Administration conducted a review of the current state of GPO and its ability to meet the digital demands of the future. And their report, which was released earlier this year, suggests that all facets of the GPO will need to be realigned. Everything from its digital publishing and preservation efforts to its workforce size, skill sets will need to be reevaluated. And even its property management. In fact, according to the Academy, with declining print demands, GPO is projected to run out of money, actually, in 2020, unless it overhauls its current business model. And this is, unfortunately, a familiar situation for many public entities as well as many private entities. So it will undoubtedly be a difficult transition, but one that is essential to GPO's core mission of keeping America informed. And today, we certainly are very interested in hearing from our witness about her vision for the GPO in the next 10 years, how she plans to address some of the recommended changes that were outlined in the Academy's report. For example, with a decline in revenues due to a decline in print demands, the Academy recommends that GPO explore service offerings that can be provided on a cost recovery basis. And furthermore, how will the GPO adjust to produce limited copies of official documents in a cost-effective manner? NAPA also states that organizational and operational efficiency and cost savings can be achieved by consolidating regional as well as DC office locations, space, and staff. The cost of maintaining the North Capitol Street office space is about $40 million, or a third, actually, of GPO's overhead annually. I know we'll want to hear about your ideas and plans in that regard as well. So these are all important questions and issues that we want to discuss today and in the future as well as we continue to reduce government spending and increase operational efficiency and transparency. I also want to acknowledge some of the really great progress that GPO has made in the digital front. Working with this committee, GPO has made significant reductions to the number of committee reports and House documents to better meet committee and House needs. GPO also, for the first time, published the Congressional Pictorial Directory in an app. And in coordination with the Library of Congress, they've produced a Congressional Record app as well. The app trend continues in 2013 with the release of the first app of the Constitution annotated. So these are very important advancements that are necessary to preserve GPO's mission in the technology-driven society and world in which we live. I know the committee is interested in learning how GPO will continue to serve the legislative and informational needs that we have here in the Congress and in government, and how GPO will be transforming itself into the modern-day information repository so that it may remain the primary source publisher as it has for the past 150 years. Again, I certainly want to congratulate you on your appointment. We appreciate you coming today, and we appreciate your dedication to GPO as well. And at this time, I'd like to recognize my colleague, Mr. Brady from Pennsylvania, for the purposes of his opening statement.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you for giving our new public printer, Honorable Davida Vance Cook, the chance to share a vision for the government printing office over the next decade. Ms. Vance Cook, who took office as the 27th public printer in August, after acting in the capacity for over a year, has brought great enthusiasm, experience, and skill to the position. We are lucky that you are there. GPO has long been managing the implications of digital publishing of government information. They are the experts. I want to hear GPO's thoughts on technology's effect on its mandate to keep America informed. We need to know how this committee can help GPO fill its mission, and I look forward to working with the chairman and the new public printer to ensure that result. Welcome, and I look forward to your testimony.
Thank the gentleman. Other members for an opening statement? Mr. Harper, the chair recognizes the gentleman.
Thank you, Chairman Miller, and thank you very much for having this hearing. And Ms. Vance Cooks, I appreciate you appearing before the committee today and offering your views and vision of where the government printing office will be 10 years from now, which is a challenging prediction sometimes. The GPO has long served an important role in our democratic system of government by providing both officials and citizens relatively easy access to a broad range of public documents. That role is changing. I've been in Congress now for 5 years, and in that time, my office has discontinued receiving the print editions of the Federal Register, the Congressional Record, committee reports, as well as bills and public laws. With that kind of fundamental change in demand from your primary customers, I think we can all understand the challenges that you and your organizations face. You're responsible for over 1,800 employees in a government agency that operates more like a business. You generate most of your revenues and produce retained earnings. However, these revenues are declining. Your business, the printing business, is changing, and the GPO is in fact an agency of the federal government and does receive an annual appropriation. Therefore, congressional oversight is in order. Particularly in light of the GPO's declining revenues and our desire to maintain public access to government documents, I believe it's important for this committee to examine the changes that you are undertaking now in order to help ensure that there is an efficient GPO operating tomorrow and certainly 10 years and even further into the future. I look forward to hearing from you this morning and discovering how we might be of assistance to you. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. Any other members have opening statements? If not, at this time I'd like to introduce more formally our witness today, Davida Vance Cooks, the 27th United States Public Printer. On August the 1st of 2013, the Senate confirmed her as a United States Public Printer, and this marked a very historic occasion as she is the first woman and the first African American to lead that agency. She joined GPO in 2004 and has served the institution in a variety of leadership capacities. She began as the Deputy Managing Director of Customer Services with the responsibility of overseeing GPO's liaison with federal agencies for in-house print production and printing procurement services. She then served as the Managing Director of its Publications and Information Sales Business Unit, where she oversaw a large print distribution supply chain operation with customers across the United States. In January 2011, Ms. Vance Cooks was named the GPO's Chief of Staff, which carried the responsibility of forming and implementing GPO's strategic performance plan and overseeing its buyout program that reduced agency staffing levels by 15%. In December of that year, she was named Deputy Public Printer, and in that capacity, she served as Acting Public Printer from January 2012 to August of 2013. She has been an extremely positive force within the agency as she worked to cut costs and expand the availability of government information in the digital age. And prior to serving at the GPO, she was the Senior Vice President of Operations at NYL Care, Mid-Atlantic Health Plan, and held several management positions at Blue Cross Blue Shield. So again, we thank you so much for joining us today. This committee is very interested in hearing your testimony, and as I mentioned to you in the hall before we started the committee hearing today, I hope you look at this committee as a resource as well for working with you in every way that we can as you meet with your agency meets so many of the challenges ahead. We certainly want to be and are a willing partner in seeing the changes that are going to be happening there. So at this time, the chair now recognizes our witness.
Good morning, and thank you. Madam Chairman Miller, Ranking Member Brady, and members of the Committee on House Administration, thank you for inviting me here today to discuss GPO in 2023, Keeping America Informed in a Post-Print World. As you know, GPO works closely with the House to provide the information, products, and services which the House needs to carry out its legislative function. Through our programs and services, GPO performs an informing function on behalf of the House and the Senate that is traceable to the Constitution. Specifically, we provide the means of acquiring information about the government that President James Madison said is so vital to maintaining an informed and enlightened public in our system of self-government. To that end, the GPO is positioning itself to keep America informed in a post-print world by shifting from a print-centric to a content-centric operation, thereby increasing the digital and value-added services that we can provide to Congress. The shift to a content-centric operation was independently affirmed by the National Academy of Public Administration. In January of 2013, they issued their findings, which state that GPO's core mission of authenticating, preserving, and distributing federal information remains critically important to American democracy in the digital age. Our digital transformation points to a profound change in the way GPO operates today. We are more than just a printer. We are the government's publisher. And as that publisher, we provide value to Congress, federal agencies, and the public, because we have a diversified product and services portfolio that focuses on digital. We support openness and transparency in the federal government by providing permanent public access to federal government information at no charge through our federal digital system, which is known as FDSys. FDSys today has over 900,000 titles available online, with 40 million documents downloaded each month. It serves as the backbone of our long-standing partnership with approximately 1,200 libraries nationwide participating in the Federal Depository Library Program. Today, we build databases, create bulk data downloads, produce e-passports and secure credentials, offer e-books, develop mobile apps, provide website design and hosting, engage in e-commerce activity, offer electronic content services, utilize digital equipment, develop digital products, and embrace a digital workflow process. To reflect the scope of our expanded services, we have rebranded ourselves as official, digital, and secure. And with more than 95% of government information being published digitally, the time has come for our name to reflect the modernization of these services. Our current name reflects a century and a half of proud tradition and history, which I respectfully embrace. But I also acknowledge that this name is limiting. Our current name does not adequately describe who we are. It does not adequately describe what we do. We are so much more than that. We are the Government Publishing Office. GPO is the nation's publisher, and I am proud to lead a workforce of dedicated men and women who believe that our future lies in providing government information to the American people in the forms and the format which they want and need. Changing our name to reflect our broad range of services is what the Academy's report has endorsed, and it is what we soon hope to achieve. Madam Chairman Miller, Ranking Member Brady, members of the Committee on House Administration, this concludes my opening remarks. I will be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. I guess I will begin questions by picking up on the latter part of your comments, your testimony about your name change. I have to say, I think when you and I first met at the beginning of the year, we talked a bit about that, and I've given that a bit of thought, and just my own personal observation is that I think government agencies, much more than in the private sector where a business's name might have, different kinds of reasons or branding or whatever for a name of a business, but in a government agency, you try to be, I think, a little more descriptive of what you actually do, right? Whether you think about the Department of Education, we can all understand what they do, right? The Department of Agriculture, people understand what they do. Environmental Protection Agency, various things. So I think the government agency's name it might seem like a small thing, but yet it's a way that the public can understand what you do. And I think as much as that you get your entire workforce to just sort of buy into the vision of what it is that they are trying to provide to the public as well. So I'm very appreciative of your willingness and that to change your name. Now, I hope you're not offended by this, but I have to say, going from the government printing office to the publishing just doesn't seem like enough to me. So I respectfully throw that out there for a little bit of consideration. I think it requires legislation for you to actually change your name. And so I only say, and I noticed when you came here and you had many of your employees here, you obviously think about your agency in a team, as a team. And I'm a big believer in team. I don't care how much technology you have. At the end of the day, it's about the people, that they buy into the vision. And the name is a part of the vision. So you might want to think about, just my opinion, having a contest perhaps amongst your own team about a different name. I don't know if you have any comment on that, but I think having a new name, as I say, it seems like a small thing, but yet it's not really.
Well, first of all, I certainly agree with you that it is not a small thing to have a name change. I know that it is a significant opportunity for us to rebrand. And let me explain why we decided on Government Publishing Office. Too many times people ask, why do you need a government printing office when everything is online? And we always have to tell people we're the ones who put it online to begin with. So we need to make sure that we change our name to reflect the brand of services that we provide. And the reason why we thought of the word publishing is because when you look up publishing, it defines services. It defines a broad range of services. Printing is just a small component. When people think of printing, they think of ink on a substrate. That's just one component of what we do. But today, when you talk about all of the things that people are doing in terms of communicating, they are using the word publishing. And the word publishing has become very synonymous with a broad range of services in the community. So really what we are trying to do with our name change is to attract the millennials. We're trying to attract the rising group of population that need to be aware that we have the services that they can provide. But when they hear the word printing, they stop cold. And to be quite frank with you, it fits our acronym, GPO.
Well, we all have to think outside the box, and not
Okay,
to
right,
belabor that point. But
Okay.
I remember in my great state of Michigan, when we changed the name of the Social Services Agency to the Family Independence Agency.
It worked.
It worked.
Yes.
It was just a whole different mindset. So I won't keep belaboring
Thank you
that.
for your
but,
thank you for your support in this. I appreciate it.
you mentioned, and I mentioned, and the ranking member mentioned as well, about you've made great strides in reducing the workforce. Really by 70% since the 1980s. We were looking through some of the numbers here before the hearing. So you went from 6,450 employees in the 1980s, and then in 1998 you had about 3,400, and today you have 1,900 employees. I mean, it's a really dramatic change in the amount of employees that you have there. Still a ways to go, though. So I guess I would ask you, as we talked about during the upcoming next 10 years, how do you see that workforce numerically evolving, and as well as what, with your new name change, whatever it ends up being, what they will be doing?
The GPO has a history of adapting to technology. When you look at our history, you'll see that we have changed from a print-centric operation to a content-centric operation. And as we have adapted our technology, our productivity has increased. And as the productivity has increased, we have had to reduce or right-size the staff. But we also, within that, have had the opportunity, and we have a history of right-sizing our staff through attrition and through buyouts. It has not been a disruptive process. Considering the fact that the GPO is undergoing a digital transformation, one in which technology will play a critical role, we believe that it is an indicator that we may eventually have to right-size again. But when we right-size, as we have always done in the past, we do it gradually and we do it when it makes sense for us. I can say that because we are engaged in a digital transformation, the skill sets will change. The skill sets will be a mix of production, digital production. We will be looking for people who are experienced in digital production, digital management, digital product development. That is because we need to make sure that we have an organization that is lean, agile, and very responsive to our stakeholders.
If I could just follow up on that, I was looking through your employee records, et cetera, and noticed that, for instance, you have your own police force, essentially. And I have a question about that. Do you need such a thing? As you know, this committee has oversight of the Capitol Police, and they, particularly with sequestration, and then when we had the shutdown and various kinds of things, and some of the incidents that have happened, et cetera, we've really been looking at everything there and how we can resource them properly, et cetera. But somehow that struck me as odd, that the GPO would have their own police force. And have you looked at that? I know that's a more recent thing, actually, and whether or not you could contract with the Capitol Police or some other federal agency, or is that an area that you would look at?
The GPO operates like a business, as one of you have mentioned. In fact, many of you have mentioned that, and I appreciate your understanding of how we're set up. We only receive appropriation about 16% of our funding. The balance, we have to earn it, and we earn it through reimbursable goods and services. So we pay for our Capitol Police, we pay for our IG, we pay for all of those functions that are governmental in nature. The question as to whether we need the question as to whether we need police, well, yes, we need police to protect the security of our people and to protect our assets. Of course we do. But the question as to whether or not they should be merged with the Capitol Police or whether they should be separate is something that we are always open to discussing, especially because we do pay for it. It's about $6 million.
Yeah. It's really what grabbed my attention. I thought, my goodness, that's a rather large line item for security.
And you've mentioned earlier that you are willing to serve as a resource, which we very much appreciate. And if you would like to take a look at that and we would work with you, that we would be happy to do so. But they do phenomenal work. We're very proud of them.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Okay, yes, that is an area I'm sure we can work together. And then I guess my final question, when we're thinking about efficiencies and cost savings, et cetera, as you know, Congress, this committee has been responsible for cutting in the House MRAs, all the individual congressional budgets. Actually, for over the last several years, there's been about a 20% cut for the MRAs, and all the committees have had a similar amount of cut in the House. And so part of all of our budgets, of course, are printing costs, et cetera, et cetera. And so we're making these reductions in our budgets, whether that's in the committees or the individual members of Congress. And yet, you actually have raised your rates this year. As a customer, I'm now asking you, you raised your rates this year 3.5%, and potentially another 3.5% after an evaluation at the end of the year. And since we all have really a mutual constituency with the taxpayers, what are your thoughts on that?
When we raised the rates, we did so with great analytical precision. We took a very good look at the cost that we are incurring in printing and in producing these documents, and we realized that we had not raised the rates in a while. We have been absorbing that cost, and as I've mentioned earlier, we have to earn quite a bit of our funding. And so this was a business decision that we did not make lightly. It reflects the need to cover our costs as noted in Title 44.
All right, appreciate that. And the chair now recognizes the
Yes,
gentleman
thank
from
you.
Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. How did the October government shutdown affect you?
The October shutdown impacted us in terms of our productivity, in terms of our revenue, our expenses, our stakeholders, our vendors, and our employee morale. And let me talk about each one, if I may, for just a moment. In terms of productivity, well, let me start this. We furloughed 70% of our staff. The 30% of the staff who remained, who were accepted, are individuals who had to protect the security, protect our assets. They supported our legislative process for Congress, and they supported the Federal Register, which printed regulations related to life and health. This was a tough time for us because when we explained to the employees that they were going to be furloughed, we had to make sure that they understood it had nothing to do with the job that they did. It was simply that we were following the strict guidelines and the strict rules of the furlough. It impacted our productivity because we lost approximately 128,000 hours of productive time. That doesn't even count the time that we spent preparing for the furlough. It impacted our revenue. We estimate that we lost about $30 million during that time period. Our expenses remained the same because the building was open. And then when the shutdown was over, we had to spend quite a bit of money in overtime because we had backlogs that had piled up, and we had to make sure that we could get back to production as quickly as possible. We were told that it would take about 3 months for an average agency to get back on track. We don't have that luxury. We had to make sure that we do it as quickly as possible, so we had to spend overtime. It caused quite a bit of pain for our stakeholders, one of which was the Federal Depository Library Program. We had planned our annual conference. It was scheduled for October. We had 300 librarians who signed up. We had to cancel. They had to cancel their flights. They had to cancel their hotel room reservations. They were scrambling for refunds. We had vendors who were in significant distress. As you know, we have a printing procurement function, which is responsible for providing printing services for agencies. These are small businesses throughout the United States. They had performed work for us. They wanted to be paid. We could not pay them because we were not allowed to pay them. And we call them the vendor distress calls because they could not make payroll. And this was a significant problem for us, and we felt it very much. It caused problems with employee morale because they were upset that they had to be furloughed. Our employees believe in their strategic mission. They wanted to come to work. They wanted to be here to work for and on behalf of Congress. And when they came back, I was there waiting to greet them, to welcome them back. And I walked around to say hello. And when I got to one of the offices, in fact, it was the IT office, there was a sign on the door, Congressman, and it said, "Glad to be back with the GPO with a happy face." And that just about sums up exactly what it did to us. The biggest lesson we learned, however, was that public access to information is critical. Our FDSys, our content management system, had spikes in retrieval on congressional materials. So we know we're on the right track with FDSys and with public information. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to address that.
Thank you. And I noticed that you do rent space after the Capitol Police. Well, I guess my question is twofold. our committee passed a bill would merge Capitol Police and the Library of Congress. If they're already there, it might be cost-saving for you to think about merging with them. Now, a lot of things happen because there are different pay scales, different, because we had to do that. It wasn't that easy, different retirement packages, different health and welfare packages, but I'll be glad to work with you with that.
Thank you.
But also, you're giving out a lot of this space. You guys interested in moving?
No, we're not interested in moving. Okay. And let me explain why, and let me talk a little bit about the space situation. The Government Printing Office building has 1.5 million square feet measured by perimeter. And about 250,000 of that square feet is just unusable because it's airwells, stairwells, hallways, and so on and so forth. And we lease currently about 100,000 square feet to 4 renters. Those 4 renters give us about $1.7 million annually to help us defray the cost of the utilities. As we speak today, we have about 70,000 square feet available to rent. And we are talking to several agencies to see if they are interested. Our goal is that by 2023, the GPO building will house a number of government agencies. And I don't believe that we should move for a number of reasons. One, the close proximity to you all, to our Congress, to our stakeholders. 2, the close proximity to our agencies. They too are our customers. 3, several years ago, a study was conducted to score what it would cost for us to relocate, for a new building to be constructed, and it came up to $320 million. That's too much money. It's easier for us to stay where we are, close proximity, serving Congress, serving the agencies. And so at this point, we are not interested in moving, but we would certainly like to fill the space.
Madam Chair, I have one more quick question. When I first became chairman of this committee, I got named at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, and at 12:30, when I walked back to my office, I had a line of bargaining units. Labor contracts were not renewed for many, many years. We worked real hard in getting that done. And I'm assuming that everything's well on the labor front because I have nobody in front of my office, unless it's in front of your office. But I have nobody in front. But I'm sure that, you know, like I said, we were instrumental. This committee did the bill for the Capitol Police merging with Library of Congress. Would offer our help if you would like to look at maybe a cost saving or some type of saving and maybe better protection that way. I'm not trying to eliminate anybody's position there. But again, how is the labor or the labor front? The contracts are being renewed. Everybody's okay there. I would assume that they are because, again, I'm not getting any calls from them.
The GPO has 13 unions, and I think that we are...
No, tell me about how to do 13 negotiations.
We are tremendously lucky because the unions have been extremely collaborative with us. We could not have made half of the changes that we have made to improve the organization without the help and the assistance and the understanding of our labor partners. In fact, I have several labor partners here in back of me. They came on their own accord, and I appreciate their attendance because they are extremely supportive of what we're doing. And the reason is because we are taking the time to work with them to make sure they understand because they are the voice of the employees. In terms of wage negotiations, we have been fortunate because we are currently working with the labor relations or with the unions to make sure that our wages now are equivalent to the civil service increase. They understand the need to drive our expenses down and to reduce them, and so they have willingly accepted that. This is good, and I am proud to work with them.
Thank you, public publisher.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
Thank the gentleman very much. And before I recognize the gentleman from Mississippi, I would ask unanimous consent to enter into the record 2 items, a statement from the National Academy of Public Administration on the challenges facing the GPO, and a report from the National Academy of Public Administration rebooting the government printing office, keeping America informed in the digital age. Without objection. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Mississippi.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Ms. Vance Cooks, for being here with us. Great to see you again.
You too.
And I am thankful that I don't have to learn any new initials, regardless of what the name finally winds up being. That is a good thing. And also, I want to say, last year I toured the passport facility down in Mississippi at the Stennis Space Center, which was a remarkable tour. Very impressed with the thought and the security that goes into producing a passport and a great workforce there. I know there are a lot of challenges. We're in an interesting and pretty difficult budget day and future. And I just want to ask a couple of questions, because we know that in any organization, and you're trying to run this like a business, the main overhead costs or operating costs are always going to be employees and your overhead for rent and such. You mentioned that 250,000 square feet are unusable in that building. Is that correct?
That's right.
All right, and then you said your desire is to lease another 70,000 square feet that is available perhaps to other agencies. Is that what
At this time.
At this time.
Yes, because we're trying to consolidate our operations and move people into one area so that we'll eventually have more space to lease to them. Right now, we're looking at about 80% of the usable space.
How much do you currently lease out to others?
100,000 square feet.
All right. So we've got 100,000 square feet that is being used, at least 70,000 square feet, perhaps more, that may be available, and 250,000 square feet that's just using up airspace right now and not
Right now,
not rentable.
yes.
All right. How much are you hoping that you will receive? Let's assume you could lease 70,000 square feet. How much revenue or rent or lease income would you see off of that, or would you hope to see?
Well, right now we receive about 1.7 million with the current renters.
Of the 100,000 square feet.
Of the 100,000, right.
All right.
And that covers, we know that our utilities, that would be the air, the water, et cetera, and steam, is about 10.5 million. So what we want to do is to at least rent enough to cover the 10.5 million that we spend in our overhead for that particular area.
All right. You're currently paying, I believe, is it 1.8 million for extra warehouse space separate from that building? Is that correct?
What are you referring to?
Well, you're leasing extra warehouse space and regional office space separate from what you have currently on the.
Are you referring to the regional offices?
Yes.
Okay. The regional offices are actually inhabited by people. I mean, they're used, that space is being used. But this is an interesting point, Congressman, because we have decided to reduce the space that at least 4 of those regional offices are using. And we've done that already. That would be the Hampton office, which is now Virginia, Atlanta, Philly, and then there's one more that his name escapes me at this point in time.
So will that dollar amount be reduced as the space is reduced? Is
That's
that what
right.
you're anticipating for
Yes,
future
that's
years?
exactly
Okay.
right.
Now, I know you mentioned the furlough. The furlough lasted 16 days?
Yes,
Okay. And 70% of the staff was furloughed.
yes.
Were they furloughed for that entire time?
Yes, in fact, it ended up more. Because when we had the 30% to be accepted, it was with the understanding that it would be a skeletal staff and that it would be scalable. The assumption was that if the congressional workload increased, we would add more,
Okay.
or if it declined, we would send them home. Unfortunately, it declined. Midway through, we sent some home.
Now, just so that I'm clear and sure, everyone who was furloughed ultimately was made whole and got their pay. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Sounds like that wouldn't be a bad thing for morale, perhaps, to at least know that they were made whole. They did not suffer an ultimate economic loss. That's what I want to be sure of.
Well, you were right in the sense that they were made whole, but what I was referring to is how they felt about the furlough during the
Sure,
time that
I
it
understand.
occurred.
I understand, but I did want to make sure that
Oh.
they did not suffer a loss in.
No. Mm-mm.
Okay. All right, well, look, I want to say that we're here to work with you, and we appreciate what you're doing. We have been very pleased with the relationship we've had with GPO, and,
Okay.
and we look forward to continue that and are available to work with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Nugent.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Ms. Vance Cook, congratulations.
Thank you.
I think it is an awesome opportunity for you, obviously, at this time of transition. Having run an organization not quite as large as yours, but having faced financial challenges, I commend you in regards to the way you deal with personnel. Particularly when you have to make tough decisions, it's always better if you can do it through attrition than through layoffs. I mean, it means so much more to your workforce, I know. But, you know, with the report that came out and the deficit you're going to run, I mean, you've talked about a number of things, trying to cover utility costs for that facility, but I also know that it's, what, $40 million a year to operate it. I don't know if that's the $10 million for utilities, but how are you going to do that over the next 10 years? Because digital, it's hard to sell digital, but you have obviously operational costs to actually take transcriptions and put it into a digital format. How do you see yourself actually meeting that demand with reduced income coming into your coffers?
I'd like to address that question in two parts. The first is your reference to the report in NAPA that describes that we're going to lose funding by 2020. Right. And then I'd like to talk about some of the initiatives that are in place for us to increase our revenue. The report talks about the fact that we will run out of money in 2020. The NAPA report is what is called a best practices report. They were presenting a worst case scenario. They were presenting an acid test. And they believe very much in scenario planning, as do we. Scenario planning is where you talk about what if, what will happen, what happens if this occurs. But they say specifically, and when you look further in the text, they describe a number of assumptions which they made as part of that model, which they know must be updated. For example, they did not take into account the savings that we would achieve from investments. That model did not take into account the leasing revenue. The model did not take into account the additional revenue we will get from the next generation of passports, which will be launched in 2015 and 16. The model also did not take into account the $30 million that we generated in savings through the buyout as it's distributed through the business units. It also assumes that we will have a head count of 1,925, when, as you have noted, we operate with fewer than 1,900 employees. It also assumes that plant operations, their direct costs will be constant, when in fact they're running at 8% lower than they were at that time. It doesn't even take into account the accounts receivable issue. At the time that report was generated, we had $29 million in account receivables outstanding. We have a dedicated group that's responsible for collecting it, and it's now down to $8.3 million. Our overhead is now trending at a 2008 level. We have done a very good job in managing our costs. And so I want you to understand that they were simply describing a worst-case scenario. We're not going to run out of money, given everything we've done with these expenses. But that takes me into point number 2, which is what are we planning to do to increase our revenue? Sir, we have a product portfolio that is specifically designed to take a look at that. It has 3 categories: tangible print, digital, and hybrid. The tangible print is that which we are accustomed to, the hearings, committees, reports, anything you can touch. Right. The digital, of course, is anything that refers to digitization of print. This is where we see the future, as you so aptly noted. This is where you'll find our pre-press operations, FDSys, e-books, mobile apps, things of that nature. And then the last category is the hybrid. This is where you have tangible plus digital with an overlay of electronics. This is where you'll find the passports and the smart cards. This product portfolio that I've described to you has very porous rows in it. In other words, it's integrated and synergistic, and they all depend on each other.
And obviously, some have a higher profit margin than others.
Exactly. That's where I'm headed.
And my question would follow up to that would be, as it relates to passport, you must know what your markup is on a passport. And you mentioned that that is another area that as passports change and morph, there's greater opportunity for you to bring more revenue in. What do we expect that to be? I mean, what is our markup on passports today, and what do you expect that to be?
Well, first of all, sir, we don't mark up passports, okay? The price point for a passport is based upon 4 components. It's based upon capital investment, labor overhead, and materials, and it is a negotiated price with the Department of State. And the volume of the passports is determined by the Department of State, so it could go up one year and down the other. And that's why we're looking at 3 other areas of revenue opportunities to take care of the issue. One is the agency customer market. The agency customer market, as it exists today for all 3 products that I described to you, is what I would call an untapped opportunity. We currently have a lot of business with the agencies through our print procurement business, but we don't really have all of it. We need to do a better job of targeting the agency customers to let them know about the 3 categories that we have, the broad range of services that we can provide to them, because unfortunately they think we can only do printing. So we need to take care of that. The second is the electronic content model that we're developing, which is what you just kind of referred to in terms of digital. We have FDSys at our disposal, and it is a powerful content management system. It is just tremendous. As I said earlier, it has 900,000 titles. Obviously, people use it. 40 million documents are downloaded. So we've developed a new product, sir, called Electronic Content Services. And this is where we're going to the agencies to tell them we can ingest their content into FDSys. And this would give us content data, metadata. We can create a lot of things with it. We can provide them with public search and display. We think we found something. Because we presented this product at the FOSSI conference, there was so much interest. We also had a webinar. We had over 100 customers, agency customers, who expressed interest in it, and we can charge for this. And then the third area would be smart cards, smart card credentials.
Well, Madam Chair, and I appreciate your comments that my time has expired, but if, for the record, if Ms. Cooks could respond as it relates to the digital security, cybersecurity, because we're talking about this digital and cyber, where do we stand within the agency in protecting all this information that's been gathered, particularly as it relates to passports and others? And so if that could be for the record. Thank you. I yield back.
Very well. Well, again, we certainly want to thank you. Thank our witness for being here. I guess just one final observation as a chairman, listening to some of the questions here, in regards to your physical space. And I appreciate it. I read through your testimony previously. I was listening very closely to what you had said there. But it's my opinion, and I know you don't want to move, but you have to be thinking in terms of being more aggressive about what you do with the space that you have, I believe. Because it's about a third of all of your overhead that you're spending for your the physical building at North Capitol Street here, according to my notes here, $40 million a year. So when you think about consolidation, and you mentioned some of your the warehouse spaces that you have, your regional offices, et cetera, some which you've already made some efforts to consolidate or various things there. I think you really need to be more aggressive in thinking about that, because that's a huge expense. And I'm not that familiar with everything that you do there, but I mean, I know that what's in this BlackBerry 40 years ago would have taken up probably a quarter of this room, right, space-wise. And so I know that the technology that's happening in the printing, publishing business has changed very rapidly as well, and so the physical space requirements have changed dramatically. And because that is still such a huge overhead for you, that will be something that this committee will continue to exercise its oversight on, is looking at that. As we've all said, I think we want to assist you in ways that we can. And we have some good ideas here together. Ranking member and I both are pledging to work with you with your security situation and those kinds of things. So there's plenty of opportunity here for us to work with your agency to assist you. And again, I would mention that all members will have 5 legislative days to submit to the chair additional written questions for the witnesses. And we'll ask them to respond, we'll ask her to respond as promptly as she can so that those answers can be made part of the record. And at this time, the hearing is adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.